go.
Guys? Yeah, wonderful.
Am I,
There we go.
am I vocal as well as visual?
Yeah, you are. Yeah,
Great.
we got you. Okay, we might as well get started with this morning's agenda. First business is unfinished business. And this is application B 2020-47. I noticed that we have the applicant has registered for support, and then there's three people that have registered in opposition. So what we may probably do, I think, is we'll hear from the members or the people that have registered in opposition first. Then that will give the applicant an opportunity to address their concerns and their application, and then we can open it up for discussion. So is Luann online? There, I see her. Luann, if you turn your mic on, please. There we go.
Okay.
Morning, Luann. There we go. Good morning. You currently have the floor. Just before we get started, the other thing as well, that if someone has already made a point or brought an issue forward, we don't need to hear another person that's in opposition make the same point, because it will be duly noted accordingly. And if you wish, you can just say that you echo their same concerns, and we don't need any more than that. Okay, Luann.
Okay, I'm actually going to let Christine Secret do the speaking. She's going to be our spokesperson.
All right then, Christine. Are you there? There we go. Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, my mic wasn't turning on there.
That's all right.
Okay, we do have some concerns with the property that they're asking to sever. Based on the Heritage Impact Assessment Report, did everybody receive the petition that the street sent in?
Yes.
We pointed out several errors that were in the report, which Mr. Owen Scott has acknowledged to Ms. Federell. We've also submitted many pictures that show the smokehouse before the 1950s. Our concern is, in the report, he interviewed Mr. Richard Federell, and his only connection to the farmhouse would be his last name. I just think a lot of facts were left out with regards to who he chose to give an opinion about the matter. And I do apologize to Mr. Scott, because he has a long list of qualifications for what he did. But we've since found so many errors that I think an independent review is necessary about the location from somebody other than Mr. Scott. I know in today's agenda, it also said the property needed to stay, if a new property was severed, it needed to look like the rest of the neighborhood. But if you see the duplex that was built on the other side, it does not look like the neighborhood at all. So our concern as well is, if it does go forward, who's going to be policing what the design of the new property looks like? Our other concern is parking on the street, how the tenants of this new property are going to be parking. We're not even sure how the new tenants of the duplex are going to be parking, because it looks like a single driveway. The new photos that were submitted that Mr. Scott sent to Ms. Mary Federell, we're not even sure it's the same property, because none of the Federell kids can actually distinguish any of the buildings on the property. And the one photo is not much older than when Mr. Leo Federell purchased the property. Unfortunately, we did find a local historian who could have looked at the pictures for us, but she passed from COVID recently. So that was a dead end. We're also aware that several trees need to be removed, but this is an area where we're trying to preserve trees, as well as there's so many historical buildings that are being destroyed locally. Why would we want to take this one down? That's basically what the street has. Luann, did you have anything to add?
No, I think you're good there, Chris.
So basically, we're just asking that we be given some time to hire somebody else to take a look at the garage and give another opinion on it.
Okay.
That is our main concerns.
All right. Okay, thank you. We had one other person that registered as in opposition, and apologize if I'm not pronouncing his name right. It was Temeshwar. And were you speaking on his behalf as well, Christine?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Is he online? I believe I see him. There we go.
Hello.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes.
Yeah. Whatever Christine has said, I'll go with that as of now.
Okay.
I got a similar concerns.
Okay. All right, good. All right, so if that's all the opposition, then what we will do is let's just briefly turn it over, or let's turn it over to the applicant, and then he can address that in his application. And then we may want to hear from Michelle as well then in regards to the heritage issues. But let's hear from the applicant first.
It's Mike Kraus here. Can you hear me?
Yep, sure can, Mike, thanks.
Okay. I'm hoping that Owen Scott is on as well because he's done the heritage study. And he'll be able to give probably a much better picture of the history of the property and all the research he has done. I'm not a heritage expert, but he is, so I have to rely on his research that he's done on the property.
Sure.
Other than that, I appreciate the concerns of the neighbors. I understand that parking is always a concern. But you know, I think I did a good job in building the property next door. It was built according to the city specs. All the drawings were approved, you know, before we put the spade in the ground. It was done under the supervision and under the policing of a city inspector. We complied with everything. We've received the occupancy permit, and I think personally, I think we did a pretty good job, and we got a lot of good feedback from many of the neighbors. But at the same time, I live in this neighborhood. I do care about what the neighbors think and what they feel, and I am open to factor in their input or hear their concerns, and possibly even, you know, have them provide some input into how this property is going to be designed. I'm very open towards that. I'm not sure if I'm open towards having that condition, but I'm willing to publicly state here that I'm willing to do that because I do care what the neighbors think. I'm not just trying to put a concrete building there that's going to diminish the neighborhood. The other comment I wanted to make is that Christine referred to the tenants. I haven't really indicated, or as a matter of fact, I'm not even sure if it's going to be tenanted. It could very well be sold, or I could have family living there. So I think that's probably presumptuous. Regarding the parking, I mean, I built a duplex next door, and I was only allowed single parking. If you look in the neighborhood, and in most neighborhoods in Kitchener, there's general parking problems because you have quite often 2-3 cars, 2-3 adults living in the home because we have a home housing crisis. And quite often you see cars even parked, you know, sideways in the boulevard. So it is an issue, but I have to work within the city limitations. I was given a single driveway, you know, even with a duplex. So that's probably something that the city will have to have a look at. I think we have a housing crisis in Kitchener. I think that's undeniable by everyone. It's impossible for anybody to find, you know, I mean, you've got bidding wars on houses everywhere. You've got rents going through the roof. So this is an infill lot. It was originally designed in the early 70s when most of the neighbors that have expressed concerns themselves benefited from the development of this area because it allowed them to buy their home. It allowed Christine's parents to buy their first home, for example. So this is a further development that was planned all along 40 years ago or 50 years ago. There's actually 4 services that were purposely installed for 4 properties here. So this plan didn't start with me. It started with the plans of the developer 50 years ago. So I think we're, you know, I think this is something that hopefully will be supported in light of the housing crisis that we're having. And maybe Owen Scott can say a few words as well.
Sure. Just before we go to Owen, just for clarification, for everyone's information, in the staff's report and recommended condition number 4, there is a clause 4.3D that does give some supervision as to the design and the construction of the development. So, Christine, I know you were asking for that, and it is in the recommendation now as it currently exists. So that's just an FYI. All right, Owen, are you there?
Sorry, can you just clarify, is that supervision by the neighborhood?
No, not by the neighborhood. It's it's to the approved plans to the satisfaction of the city's director of planning.
Yes, of course. I mean, that's right.
Yeah. So there is a mechanism in there is all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Owen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the HIA that was done back in March of 2018, we did find an error. The error was in the chain of title as to who had owned the property from the beginning until today. And that error was because the records are incomplete. Anyway, that error has been corrected. There is an amended HIA that I created. And we also clarified the issue of the stone garage. The stone garage, in my opinion, was not there in 1955. I don't know when it was built, but it was not built before 1955. So it is not a heritage attribute of the property. The aerial photographs, although are not terribly clear, are clear enough to show there's no building there in 1946 or in 1955. There is a survey which you can find in the new HIA, actually in the previous HIA, was done in 1964 that shows the buildings on the site, and the buildings on the site are exclusively the house. There is no other building shown in the survey that was done by an Ontario land surveyor. So I am convinced that that garage is nothing of heritage. It is something that was built after 1955, and as I said, I don't know when. I don't think I can add anything more to that in terms of clarification. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, good. Just before we open the floor up, Michelle, did you have anything that you wanted to add, or should we just move forward on questions?
I can just share for the committee's information that Mr. Scott's revised, updated Heritage Impact Assessment was circulated to Heritage Kitchener in February, in March. Earlier this month. They did review the additional information that was provided, and they didn't have any concerns with that information. Staff also reviewed that information and agreed with Mr. Scott's conclusion.
Okay. All right, good. Anyone have any questions, comments? Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have quite a few questions for staff. Hopefully they'll indulge me. I have considerable interest in this application because at one point in my life, I was a manager of heritage planning. So just my first concern is to ensure that staff are satisfied that there's no heritage value whatsoever to both the garage at the front and also the storage shed at the back. Is the storage shed at the back considered to be heritage?
Sorry, that was me. Carry on.
So if Michelle can help me out there, the storage shed at the back, is that considered heritage as well?
Through you, Chair, both the detached garage at the front and the storage shed at the rear are not considered to be heritage based on the information that we have been provided and based on the review of the documents, primarily the surveys, the aerial photographs, the pictures that have been provided.
Okay, so that addresses my first concern, Mr. Chairman. The second concern then is to ensure that the new dwelling that's being constructed is sympathetic and sensitive to what's around it. Was condition or a similar condition to, as the chairman mentioned, 4.3b, was that imposed on the severance to the east, where the white building currently exists?
It's probably a question for Julianne, I would think, or Garrett. Without trying to answer the question, I would imagine it was, because that's a standard condition, but in any event, Julianne or Garrett, can you answer that?
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to
Michelle?
answer
Okay,
it.
I'm sorry.
Yep. It was a condition, and it was a condition that the property owner worked through with both myself and Sandro Bassanese in our urban design section to work through the guidelines and official plan policies that relate to character in neighborhoods prior to issuance of the building permit.
Yeah, because I think that's the neighborhood's concern, Mr. Chairman, that the one that's been built is not particularly sympathetic. One of the comments that I would make then is if the shed at the back isn't considered to be heritage, why are we limiting the lot depth on this severed property? Because even at a 6-meter setback, which is something that's being recommended by Mr. Scott, it's this particular new building is going to be set back closer to the street than anything around it. I'm wondering why the building can't be pushed further back. Just a question for staff. Why are we severing in the configuration we are?
For you, Mr. Chair. So the owner has indicated that they want to retain the location and the construction of the existing detached shed. As part of the condition that's being recommended, part of the consideration for the new build will also be the siting of the building on the lot. So although the minimum setback requirement for a semi-detached dwelling would be 4.5 meters, it's possible that, and it's highly likely that through the review of the elevation drawings and the site plan that will be required as per condition 4, that the average front yard setback would be maintained with what's existing in the neighborhood.
Okay, and in similar situations, Mr. Chairman, even in my short time on the committee, an application like this, I would have thought that the building design for the semi would have been brought forward so the neighbors could actually see it and make some comments on it. I mean, we are obviously leaving it up to city staff, but I would have thought that the applicant would have come forward with what they were actually going to build. That's my comments.
Okay. Anyone else? Bob, Mike?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank our colleague, Mr. Hanna, for bringing forward some of those concerns. I agree that it would have been nice to see some elevation of what the proposed building is going to look like. But other than that, it's obvious that there are still people in the neighborhood who are concerned about this. There's some, how do I say this? Some difference of opinion as to when the stone garage was built. The heritage planner, Owen, said that it wasn't there in 55. Some of the applicants, are not the applicant, but some of the objections are saying that it was. And really, I think all the people who are objecting to this, Mr. Chair, are asking for more time to review the heritage study and maybe clean up some errors that were there. So although having said that, both our heritage planner and the independent heritage planner have come to the conclusion that that this is not really a heritage issue, neither the garage nor the shed at the back. I'm going to toss it out to the rest of the committee. Is this something that we need to take a second look at? Or is this something that we are prepared to move ahead on? So that's a question for the rest of the committee. That's my position at this point.
Scott?
I thank my colleague, Bob for his comments as well. I was leaning actually, once I'd seen the comments from the neighbors and also read their original, is to consider deferring this application because, again, I think that even though the building elevations are going to be within the review of city staff, there's a lot of unknowns here about color, design, construction materials, et cetera. I really personally think the applicant would be it would be best for him to work together with the neighborhood and come up with a design that actually works. We did that recently, I recall, on an application on Moore Avenue, and it wasn't in a heritage context. I'm satisfied that staff indicate that there's no heritage value to either of the buildings on the site. But I think coming up with a plan that would show what he actually wants to build would be the right thing to do. And I'd like to see that plan before I make a decision.
Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thanks again to Mr. Hanna. I agree. I think we need a little bit more time. I think that there needs to be an elevation drawing prepared to show not only to the city, but to the adjacent neighbors. So my question for Mr. Hanna is that a motion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I am prepared to move a motion that the application be deferred in order for the applicant to provide a building design for the lot so that it can be reviewed by both staff, the neighborhood, and the committee.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Just for the record, the reason I opposed it is I have full confidence in staff in order to be able to properly work through an elevation to the satisfaction of the neighborhood and its aesthetics. But that's just for the record. That's why the opposition was there. All right. The next application, 51 David Street, the applicant has just asked for a short deferral of time. He's going to be back with us this morning. He had something that came up apparently, I guess, this morning that he has to deal with. So for right now, we'll just set that one aside, and we will then move on to new business. Application A 2021-11 is 55 Franklin Street. And we have two people registered in support. They are the applicants and the agent. So I think it's a fairly straightforward application. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Does anyone have any questions or comments to the applicant? Or a motion? Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have read through the application. I am pleased to see there's lots of affordable housing. I think this is a good idea, and there's no opposition to it as far as I can see. So I would move that this be approved subject to the 3 conditions.
Second? Scott, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Next application is A20 or 2021-12. It's 39 Crosby Drive. That one we have the applicant, which is Mark. You online, Mark? There we go. Okay. I personally had a in the recommendation, staff's recommending approval with some conditions. I had just a question for condition number 1 to staff. Maybe they can further explain that. I've never seen this before where we're asking for one property owner to get a letter of permission from another one. So, which kind of causes a few concerns for me because it can put one in a vicarious situation over the other, which doesn't really encourage a good situation necessarily. So If staff could maybe further explain that to us, that would be appreciated, and then we can turn it over to the members of the committee. Do you want to take a run at that, Julianne? Your mic's off.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members.
Yeah.
Yes, we have from time to time implemented this condition, and that is just so that people can acknowledge that trees sometimes cross property boundaries. And we want to make sure that, in a case where they're not only the canopy, but maybe the root system might be crossing a property boundary, we want to make sure that all property owners are aware of what's going on and get permission to deal with the tree at hand or the trees at hand. And so that is something that is not uncommon.
Okay. Scott?
Chairman, I shared your similar concern because if the neighbor doesn't have a good relationship with his, I guess with the applicant, with his neighbor, it could theoretically get approval. So, I mean, I think the reason the condition is being imposed is because of a tree. And I was by the property just this past weekend, and I'm not sure there's any trees. There's a tree in the rear yard of the neighbor's property, but it seems to be very, very far back, and I'm not even sure it's an issue. Could staff comment on that as well?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have a personal knowledge of where the tree is located because I didn't look at every single site, but it was requested by one of our environmental planners for a reason, and that is just to ensure that there is appropriate conversation that happens between the property owners, and so that there are no surprises during the process. And I think it's just a good customer service, like for the various property owners to be able to speak to each other about these things, so that it doesn't create any animosity after the fact.
Maybe we can hear about Mark. Can you shed some light on this for us? The applicant.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I was talking to the neighbor because he had some concerns about that tree.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in a situation where he doesn't have access to get to that tree to get taken down. He is concerned about it having some rot in the tree itself because it splits into two. He's a little concerned about the tree might not be as healthy as he thinks that it is. While I'm in the process of doing the work to the house, he was wondering, he was keeping in mind that he would like to eliminate that tree.
Okay, so then you're getting a letter of permission or something, just showing that there's a cooperation between the two of you. From what I'm hearing, would not be a problem for you then, correct?
Yeah, no, like I said, I've talked to him about what my plans were, to what I was going to do with the garage. Okay. We talked about, the process of how everything was going to work, and he was quite fine with everything. The only thing that he was concerned about was the tree on his property, and that he would like to have some time to make a decision whether he wants to get that removed. And in order for them to remove that means that they would be going on my property to remove that tree.
Right. Okay. All right. So it doesn't seem like the condition, and I don't think, Scott, we had the same concern would be a problem. Scott?
Yeah, I was going to say, based on what I'm hearing, maybe the condition is appropriate. Just a question for the applicant, though. On your survey sketch, it was based on the old survey before you built your kind of carport garage addition. Those figures that seemed to be sketched in, were they based on the original survey, like the 14.8 and the 14.95?
So right now, I didn't put the attached carport on the house. When I purchased that house, it was. The only thing that I did was get a permit to allow me to enclose that carport and now make it a garage.
So you're confident that the figures are correct. I just don't want to run into a situation where you build it and find out you're closer than 0.9.
Yeah. So right now it's at the 0 point, or actually right now it's at 3 feet, and the new code requires it to be 4 feet. So if I add on or if I remove that garage, it means I lose a foot of that garage. Now the garage is only 12 feet wide as it is right now. Well, if I take a foot of that away, that's only 11 feet. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, doesn't leave you a whole lot of room trying to get a vehicle in there and trying to open up the door as well, right? So every foot counts. So I'd like to try and maintain that 12 feet as opposed to the 11 feet that if I was to redo it and not get the variance, then I would have to make it smaller. I'm only going with the 2'6" just to give me a little bit of play, but it's going to be the same size as what it is now existing.
Okay. And then that takes into account for any eve overhang as well, doesn't it, Mark? Because you need to take.
So
you need
so
to.
yeah. So so you're going to have a 3 foot. So the walls themselves will be 3 feet from the property line with a 2 foot overhang, and that'll leave a foot back from the property line.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? No motion.
I'm satisfied with the commentary and am prepared to make a motion.
Okay.
And that's
Second.
approved.
All right.
As
second.
submitted.
Bob, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, next application is,
Through the chair,
yeah,
I just wanted to let you know that Mr. Chauvin for application A 2021-10
right.
has joined the call when the committee is.
Is ready. Okay, well, let's hear Crosswinds first, please. A 2021-13, 2 Crosswinds Drive. It's a fairly straightforward application. Is the applicant online?
You guys hear me okay?
Yep.
All right.
Yep, there you are, Phil. Okay, so is there any questions, comments from members? Bob?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a minor application. There's one condition, pretty straightforward. Unless my fellow members of the committee have some concerns, I would move that this be approved with the one condition.
All right. Second, Scott, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's that one. Okay. I think what I'd like to do prior to hearing from Pierre is maybe just continue. We'll give Jennifer, I'd like to give Jennifer an opportunity to join us because this other application is recommended for refusal. And I'd just like to hear more opinions on it, I think. So she was supposed to be joining us at about 10:30. So let's just hear a couple more applications, see if she comes on stream. And then if so, we can move forward with that one, I think. Is that all right with everyone? Just to give it a more fair opportunity, that's all to be heard. So then that being the case, the next application then would be A 2021-14, which is 247 Lydia Street. We have representative or agent, and there's one in opposition as well. Staff's recommending approval with a condition. So maybe once again, what we'll do is we'll hear from the person in opposition. Is Heather on line there? No?
Yes. She is
Hello?
just, we're just moving her over, so just one
Okay,
second.
sounds good. Yep, thanks.
Jennifer just entered the meeting.
Did she? Okay,
She is here.
okay, good.
Okay, and here comes Heather.
All right.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Morning. Apologies for my late intrusion.
That's all right, Jennifer. So we're on application A 2021-14. That's 247 Lydia Street. And we were just holding off for David Street so we can hear that one then afterwards. So, and then carry on with the regular schedule. So Lydia Street. And we're looking for Heather, who's in opposition.
I'm sorry. In the attempts to move her, oh, there we go.
There we go.
Thank you. She's had a little bit of trouble getting connected. Heather, are you there?
Well-
Can you unmute now?
It's Heather Mackay here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry about that. I was disconnected from the call.
That's all right.
And this is, just to make sure you have the right Heather, this is the application for 247 Lydia.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I won't take up much of the committee's time given your large agenda today and that I provided written submissions. I just want to make two brief points. The first is the assertion in the staff report that the proposed project doesn't really alter a situation that has been in place for 90 years. In my submission, that's just factually incorrect. It is accurate to say that the proposed addition to the home doesn't alter the status quo. And that's because the addition there just essentially adds a second floor to the already existing structure. But the proposed garage is a fundamental change to the property because it adds an additional structure not previously existing behind the current structure. And it's that proposed garage that I submit has serious adverse impacts on our backyard. Currently, half of the view from our backyard is obstructed by the current garage, and the addition doesn't change that. But the addition of the proposed garage means 100% of our backyard will be obstructed by a structure. And as I set out in my submissions, that fundamentally changes the nature of our backyard and our enjoyment of it. And the second and final point I would make orally is that I don't think the adverse impacts have been studied by staff appropriately. I would ask that the application be deferred so that city staff could specifically consider the adverse impacts of that structure to my property. And also that perhaps the owners or the applicants be required to ask their builders for alternatives regarding the garage, which would not totally obstruct our view or provide persuasive reasons why it must be where it is planned to be.
Chair.
And
Heather, if you have the YouTube stream of the meeting open, that is what will cause the echo. So if you just have the Zoom call as the only source of sound for the meeting,
I will try to close that.
My apologies for the interruption.
Okay.
I think the problem should be resolved now.
Yep. Sounds like it.
Thank you. Did you need me to repeat my second point because of the echo, or were you able to hear that?
I heard it. Does anyone else need to rehear that? No, we all got it. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll let it turn this then over now to Greg, the agent for the application, and he can address the neighbors' concerns.
Absolutely. I do want to just point out that the garage in mention is not part of the variance that we're pursuing right now. So our main point for our variance is for the addition to the house. That, keeping in mind, the plan for the garage is also to be built in the same fashion, quality, and finishes to match the finishes of the house that we will be renovating. So I want to bring back the focus to our actual variance application, which is strictly for the house and not the garage, because it does impact the applicants themselves and their addition timetable.
Right. Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, and looking at the application, I just wanted staff to confirm that the garage, and in my opinion, is fully compliant with the zoning bylaw. You could get a permit for the garage today if they wanted to.
You, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to look at the report one more time. I don't have a paper copy in front of me. Just
Yeah.
give me a few minutes and I will respond to your question.
Yeah.
Mr. Hannah.
So while we're waiting for that, yes, the variances are actually to legalize the existing building.
Yeah.
And I've looked at this application and I fully support it. I sympathize with the neighbor that they're losing their views, but being in planning for as long as I am, I know that sometimes that happens because things are compliant with zoning bylaws and it results in changes to properties. The one question I had for the applicant, though, there's several conditions that are being recommended by staff that relate to trees. And I think what you're doing is actually very sympathetic to trees because you're actually taking a garage down that's very close to a tree and then building a new one that's kind of in between two big trees. So are you okay with the conditions?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we do plan to protect all the neighboring trees before we do start construction.
Okay, perfect.
We're just waiting for Julianne, Bob.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. I
That's
just
all right.
wanted to
No problem. That's all right.
refamiliarize myself with the contents of the report.
That's okay.
To answer the question of Mr. Hannah, I believe there were no variances that were specific to the construction of the garage. In fact, all the variances seem to be related to the addition of the house as the applicant has suggested. So the garage, from reading the report, it indicates that it is generally in the location that the old garage was in. So I hope that answers your question, Mr. Hannah.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? Questions, comments, motion, Bob?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Notwithstanding the opposition from the neighbor, this is fairly straightforward. I think it's just recognizing the existing situation. The variances are fairly small, 2.6 versus 3.0 and 0.76 versus 1.2. So I think that's a fairly minor variance, and there's only the one condition. So I move that this be approved as per the one condition in the staff report.
Okay, second. Scott, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now that Jennifer's here and I gather that Pierre is still hanging about, we can flip back to 51 David Street. So it's application A 2021-10. There is one registered to, or two registered to speak or on this application, both in support, and they are the applicants. There's no opposition. Staff is recommending refusal of the application. However, there's a provision in there since if we wish to proceed on the application, they've also included some conditions, which makes it a little bit confusing as to what the true position is from staff on this. So maybe what we'll do is, since it's, we'll turn this over to Pierre and let him just walk us through the application. Then I've got a couple comments myself. I've thought through this one very carefully, and we'll turn it over to the committee members.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, staff. Pierre Chauvin with MHBC Planning. I think Stephen Litt, who is the owner applicant, is also the other delegated person, so right. He will not be speaking. I will be. And I just want to say thank you for reorganizing your schedule this morning because of my emergency situation this morning, but thank you for doing that. I do find myself in an unusual situation for the first time before your committee with staff in opposition. This is my first time, so you should try to work with your staff to get a positive outcome. But nonetheless, with respect to my colleagues at city staff, we certainly disagree with their opinion. We This is a very small use. It's about 1,700 square feet in the basement of this proposed building, which is currently under construction for a 6-story, 32-unit apartment building. What we were asking for is relief to the bylaw to allow a private, basically club or lodge within the basement of this unit or apartment dwelling in order to allow for either space for the tenants of the building or members at large for a membership fee to utilize for a variety of things, flex space. A number of things have been discussed in terms of what it could be used for, but we're thinking at this time, our client is thinking of utilizing a space for studio space, sort of a wine bar, wine tasting bar, a variety of different things, or at least allowing the flexibility to accommodate that space for these types of private type of membership only type of space use. Now, this is, in my mind, the policies of your official plan do contemplate or encourage this type of commercial activity. This is within the urban growth center and within a mixed use designation, as it implies mixed use. There is a unique situation, and I'll get into this more detail, but there is a special policy that allows or directs commercial uses, and now it doesn't define what kind of commercial uses, but it directs commercial uses to the other side of the block of this block, bounded by David, Queen, Cortland, and towards Queen Street as opposed to David. Now the intent behind that kind of, and we've done a lot of research on this, goes back to the old Victoria Park neighborhood secondary study, which is dating back to '82, which at that time there was a lot of concern from the residents in the area about the impacts on the park and sort of the traffic that impacts that may have on the stability of the residential neighborhood. And that, as a result, there was direction to try to limit commercial activity in and around the periphery of the park. Times have changed, obviously, and as with obviously provincial policy, all kinds of things have occurred, as we all know, that have encouraged more activity, more intensification in our urban growth centers. And I think your current official plan does recognize that and actually encourages this kind of development in your urban growth centers and recognizes and supports sort of these unique and niche retail commercial uses. And that's exactly what this is all about. And it recognizes that these mixed use designations will evolve over time. So I firmly believe this use is certainly in keeping and consistent with your urban growth center mixed use policy designations. There is, like I said, no specific definition of a commercial use in the policy, in that special policy, which directs it towards Green Street. So it is a little ambiguous that way. But with respect to the overarching policy framework, this is definitely consistent with the intent of that, the UGC and mixed use designation. With respect to, and the implementing zoning has carried forward that special policy with this in terms of a special use provision. And again, it simply took all the commercial uses from your typical and within the mixed use zone or some and just lumped it into the sort of prohibited category. And unfortunately, private clubs and lodges were lumped into there. I would suggest that a private club and lodge doesn't have the same sort of characteristics as a typical retail commercial use, and doesn't have the same traffic or issues that were the crux of the policy in the first instance when the Victoria secondary plan was put in place. So the use itself is, we're not talking about removing all the commercial uses, we're simply talking about reinstating that private club use. Now, it should be noted that there are already a number of uses that are permitted as a right, like an educational establishment, a printing establishment, a hospice, daycare center, a security service. All these uses do have some kind of commercial component. And this particular private club or lodge is not very far off from sort of the activities that you would typically see from these other uses that are permitted as a right. So again, I think, in my opinion, this is the requested variance meets the intent of the zoning. As I mentioned, this is a unique and sort of a niche use, and which is exactly what's promoted in the urban growth center to help contribute to the vibrancy of the downtown. This is what we want. And so again, this, to me, this is certainly a desirable and appropriate use for the space, the basement space, which is typically underutilized. And then lastly, from a impact perspective or a minor perspective, there aren't any changes proposed to the building or footprint. It's all being self-contained within the basement of the building. The requested parking variance that we're asking for is also well supported, given there's a number of public spaces throughout the downtown to accommodate this type of use. So the impacts, in my view, are very nominal. And in fact, traffic staff have concurred with that conclusion. So I think, just going through my notes, I think that's pretty much my my submission. I would suggest, I also note that just out of information that the new bylaw, the Crosby bylaw, doesn't even contemplate a private club or lodge anymore. So it kind of suggests that this type of use is not even being considered. So I just throw that out there as an observation, but be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Great, thank you, Pierre. I think that was pretty well put forward. Personally myself, I've gone through this report, considered it carefully. I don't see any negative objections from any of the city departments or anyone outside in the neighborhood or anywhere. I personally can support this application. I think it's a good utilization of space in an otherwise difficult type of space to deal with, and is complementary to the park itself and given its location and what have you. So that's just my position, and I'd like to open the floor to the members of the committee. Scott?
I had one quick question for the applicant and several for staff. I'll start with the applicant first. Mr. Chauvin, you partially answered my first question, which was where is this particular space going to be? And I'm looking at your plans and I'm looking at the basement level. Would you confirm that it's the amenity room that's currently identified on those plans?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my apologies. I don't have the plan in front of me, but I would have to say yes, it is. It's located towards the front of the building, towards the Davis Street side of the building. That's helpful.
And if, just to follow up then, if the committee in its wisdom were to support the staff recommendation and refuse, it looks like this would be the only amenity space that the residents would have access to, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
I just want to point out, and staff rightly pointed out, this could still be used for the residents of the building.
Okay.
And so it leads me to my thought is that why is that any different? The fact that we're introducing private members to come in, it's still being actively used in the same manner. So,
okay.
My observation.
Question for staff then, through you, Mr. Chairman. Could they confirm how dated the OP policy is? Mr. Chauvin said 1982. I'm just curious if that is correct. And could also confirm that the number of spaces at issue is 6. That's my calculation. So those are 2 questions.
Just looking at the report through you,
Yep.
Mr. Chair. Give me a minute, yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
In the absence of paper copies, it just takes a little
Yeah, I
bit
know,
of information.
and I recognize your plate's pretty full right now too. So
I apologize.
that's all right.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I know this might be a bit tricky, but I literally did get an email about 5 minutes ago from somebody who was interested in speaking to this matter. I have tried to send them the link to the meeting, but I'm anticipating, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to use it as of yet. So
All right.
just stand. I'm going to keep an eye on them, but I'm not sure what the status will be.
For you, Mr. Chair, the policies that are referenced are policies that are in our current official plan. And they aren't referencing sections out of a secondary plan that I can gather from the comments in the report. With respect to the comments that Mr. Chauvin made, I just want to go on record as, we can agree to disagree in terms of the appropriateness. The intent of the zoning was really just to kind of localize where commercial activities could happen and take that away from certain streets so that those streets don't have negative impacts that might be associated with some of those commercial activities. But that said, staff did provide committee with an opportunity that if the committee decided to see its way to supporting this application, just some conditions. So that in order to clarify that position, I know that a number of you had mentioned that and wanted some clarification on that. It's what we like to call a soft refusal. So to apply, it has an opportunity for committee to make a choice, and which you always do, but I'm just saying that this gives you a little bit more guidance.
Right.
Chair Sobalski, can I, just to help the question, the policy's been around for a while. It was in the previous official plan. It was carried forward in the new official plan. Prior to the 1994 municipal plan, Kitchener municipal plan, there was a secondary plan completed for the Victoria Park neighborhood secondary plan, and that was approved back in 1982. We've got all the background of these documents in our office. I reviewed all these documents. There is considerable discussion and dialogue with respect to concerns with respect to traffic going through the park and the stability of the surrounding neighborhoods. And it was on that basis that this policy came into effect in the municipal plan. It was carried forward from that secondary plan into the municipal plan. So that's the genesis of it.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I also think probably by opening it up to the neighborhood, it makes the whole thing more economically viable as well for sustainable operation. Scott?
Mr. Chairman, you've kind of put your position in front, and I'm going to do the same. I'm kind of in this case tend to be supporting staff because I want to know the relevancy of the existing official plan policy, and there is one specific to it. And one of our tests, obviously, is it has to support the official plan. So I think I'll probably be knocked down. There might be support for this, but I have a question for the applicant under that scenario. The date of June 1st, 2021 to fulfill all the conditions, site plan approval, building permit, occupancy permit, is that going to give you enough time to fulfill all those conditions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have site plan approval. Foundation permits are received. Occupancy, I don't know why that would even be a consideration, but that would be problematic. But like in my opinion, it shouldn't be a requirement.
How long?
The reality is the building's under construction.
Right.
How long would it take you to get an occupancy?
Yep.
I would say a year and a half. I'm guessing. I can't say. Again, I don't know.
You're building an
the
entire
relevance of the imposing this condition.
Yeah, you're building an entire condo project, so that's got all.
The building is being built. It's not as though we're.
So again, my comment through you, Mr. Chairman, is if the committee decides to, in its wisdom, to support this, I would say that date needs to change. I will be not supporting it. I think the space that's there could be used by the residents for party room, whatever else. So I'm not supportive.
Okay. Anyone else? Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a very interesting situation. And like our chair, I went through it several times over the weekend. And I have some concerns. I think this in some regards is a good idea, but let me just quickly recap my thought process. All apartment buildings that I've ever been in, and even including retirement residences, they all have these meeting rooms or whatever you want to call them, amenity space. They do that, and it's for the inhabitants of that apartment building or of that dwelling for whatever they want, anniversary parties, wedding parties, bingo, bridge club. I think in some cases, these places charge the tenants for the use of the room a minimal amount, probably just to cover cleanup. And this application, the building that's going up, which by the way, I think is an absolutely beautiful building, that has one too. So if it's just going to be for the people dwelling inside the building, the condo owners or renters, that's fine. There's really no, I don't even think it would need a variance, and parking wouldn't even be an issue. I think where this comes to a soft refusal, to quote Ms. Van Westerholt on that, is that I believe, and subject to comments from perhaps our other committee members, there's two conditions, site-specific use provision 397U and special regulation provision 507R, which, if I understand correctly, prohibit commercialization. In my first instance, where it's in for use with just the people within the building, that doesn't apply. Where this becomes an issue is when it's starting to draw customers from the outside of the physical building itself. So my question is, we can, and it's kind of a legal question, so maybe Ms. Meter might want to comment on this. I know it can't be an official legal opinion, but my understanding is that this committee can make a variance to these special provisions, but we can't throw them out. We can't make them null and void because that would be a zone change, not a zone variance. So that's got me a little confused there as to whether we can do that. Having said that, I am in kind of agreement with those policies that we don't really want a whole lot of commercializations around the periphery of Victoria Park. But I guess the question is how intense is this, sorry for the air quotes, commercialization? I think Mr. Bateman has put in some very good ideas if we were to approve or to move ahead with this. But I think there should be a couple of extra conditions to put in this if we move ahead, such as, first off, there's no problem with parking. I have no problem with that at all. And from what Mr. Chauvin has said, and from what others have said, this would probably be permissible under Crosby. It's just 85-1 that it's not. Sorry if I'm taking up a lot of time.
That's right.
I've got, I think what I would like to suggest is that if this is to go ahead, there be a fixed number of external memberships permitted. I'm going to toss out, say, a number of 100, in addition to all of the existing tenants or owners of the property. And I'd also like to suggest to downsize the possible commercial aspects of that by limiting signage to something with inside the building, so that there isn't a big LED flashing sign out in the front advertising this so-called speakeasy, which I think is a very improper term to be using. I had my parents teach me about speakeasies when I was a young boy, a millennia ago. So those are my thoughts. I'm kind of sitting on the fence. I appreciate Mr. Hanna's comments. I think that it's a very small space. You're only going to be able to get 40 people at any one time in there. I don't know about the financial viability of that, but I don't think that's the issue of this committee. That's the issue of the owner. Lots of businesses start up and don't go very far. I think that's pretty well all my notes. And to kind of summarize, I would support this if the external membership was limited to 100 and that there is no external signage on the property. You could put a small sign, something like a home office sign. You'd need a sign permit. And that could be put in the front. I believe the front of the building has a glass section. You could call it whatever you want to call this space, but I think we need to limit the amount of walk-in traffic. So I'm sitting on the fence and I'm hoping to hear from committee members or Mr. Chauvin again, but I need some feedback on my thoughts.
Pierre?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have no problem with those conditions that Mr. McCall is suggesting. The reality is, as he's noted, the space is only 1,700 square feet, and probably by fire code wouldn't be able to accommodate even that amount of people. So that's not an issue. But I am, when you first mentioned it, it kind of struck me as kind of people zoning, which concerns me a bit. But given the reality of the size and the space, I think that'll dictate the capacity in any event, and probably much lower than 100 people. Signage is not an issue. And if I may, if you can indulge me one last, just to go back to Mr. Hanna's comment, and just to clarify, this special policy and zoning regulation only really affects our lot and the Drulo apartment next door to us.
I think it's a bit biased, to be honest.
Sorry?
Seems to be a bit biased in favor of the possibly the park or the boathouse. So
perhaps I don't know what the city's motivation was, but I just wanted to point out that this special policy and the regulation only applies to us and the Drulo apartment. So the likelihood of any more commercial space ever occurring in the parking lot of Drulo, not going to happen. And really, this is the only space. And again, we're talking 1,700 square feet in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
So those
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To seek clarification from Mr. Chauvin, there is a property would be, I guess, the north of this. It's known as Kitchener Housing. I'm not involved with them anymore, but I know they have amenity space in the basement. I've been in that amenity space, and they could do the very same thing, although, and I don't want to get into the people zoning thing. So I think there is more opportunities than just the two that you had mentioned. I think there are others that.
My point is that you're absolutely right. They're allowed to. They don't have the special policy, and right next door.
I think they do. I think that policy applies to everything on along David Street.
Debate it, but
anyway,
I have the map if you want to see it, but I don't want to get into debate here. But in any event, I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Jennifer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I just had, based on these great discussions and comments that have been put forward through you, Mr. Chair, I do have a few questions for the applicant. First of all, how do you access this space?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is an access, I believe, through the front entrance. There's a staircase, and also there's an elevator down if you can access it through the side of the building. There's an elevator for the tenants, as well as it would go downstairs.
Okay.
It's in the
And,
center of the building if you're looking at the plan, the elevator.
okay, thank you. That's helpful. So you actually have to go into the lobby and then down from there. Is that right?
Yeah, just bear with me. I'm just pulling up the plan, so we're looking at the same thing. There is a staircase at the front. If you look at the very front of the building, front top corner, there's a staircase going down.
Would you be able to share your screen, Mr. Chauvin? Because for those of us that don't have all the attachments.
Yep. I'm being told by my client that there's a separate lift for the basement commercial. Okay. I can't, the host has to enable my screen sharing.
Jennifer, you need to give us a few minutes. We don't typically permit screen sharing for this meeting because it kind of opens up a door. So we just need to permit these settings. So give me 1 second. Sarah, do you mind possibly helping me with that? I don't think if I give you a host permission, I have the ability to allow it.
If you can look at the top, if you're looking at the floor plan, there is in the top left corner, the lobby, and there is an elevator that goes to the basement.
Mm-hmm.
And as well, there's stairs there. So they would enter at that location on the ground floor and go down the stairs or go down the lift.
Okay, thank you. I think that's sufficient for me. And the parking variance relates solely.
So right in this location.
Right.
So this is the basement level. So you're going up the stairs. And then here's your lift.
Thank you. And the parking variance relates solely to this this private club use, right?
Correct.
All right. So I'm having trouble. Can you, Mr. Chauvin, you did speak to some of the uses that would be permitted in this space as of right. Can you give those back to me again? I didn't get a chance.
Sure. Yep, that would be an educational establishment, a printing establishment, hospice, daycare center, security services.
Daycare. These are all, and there's nothing that would limit the daycare to the tenants only or anything like that. Come and go from the building. Okay. And so based on that, I'm having a hard time seeing what the actual impact is of doing this. You're going into the building in the same way you would. It's similar to uses that are permitted in terms of how it functions. People come and go, they're permitted to as of right. Is there a variant? There's no variance associated with taking the space away from the tenants as for their exclusive use, right?
No.
Oh, well, reality too, I think we must remember that Victoria Park is right across the road, a huge amenity space for all the tenants. So
I just want to make sure that there's no bylaw requirement for exclusive amenity space in the building.
we meet those.
Okay. And so, and I was thinking about, so I know Mr. McCall had asked about this, but my understanding, and this is my legal opinion, it's my understanding is that the purpose of having a right for a minor variance is so you can amend the regulations. And that the case law is very clear that you can amend an outright prohibition. Otherwise, you would be circumventing the Planning Act if you could not seek a variance to an outright prohibition. So it's completely appropriate to seek a variance to add a use that is otherwise prohibited, so long as it meets the 4-part test. And in my opinion, based on what I've seen in all these discussions, in function and impact, it meets the general intent and purpose of the bylaw and the official plan. That's just big, and the only variance associated with it for function wise is the parking variance, which people seem to be satisfied with. I'm not seeing what the impact is, the negative impact of doing this. As has been pointed out, there are other commercial uses in the area. The boathouse itself is, and I don't think that that's having any kind of detrimental impact on the park. In fact, I think it's a positive element of the park personally. I don't see why commercial uses couldn't be permitted as long as there's no impact. And of course, we're looking at the site specifically. It doesn't, because if the committee were to choose to grant this on a site specific basis, that does not open up the floodgates and guarantee that any other application would be permitted. I personally don't see any concerns with this. Mr. Chauvin, you indicated you were satisfied with Mr. McCall's conditions, which I think are very reasonable as well. I also wondered about it being people zoning, but I think as long as it's reasonably tied to the purpose and intent of the regulation and the variance itself, I think it's fine, especially if you're in agreement with it. I think it would also make sense, although you probably need a further parking variance. I don't know. Actually, if you're going to 0 anyways, I think it would be appropriate to limit the square footage of the property that can be used for this purpose as well. I don't know if that would be a concern at all.
We're getting better.
All right. So, Mr. Chair, I based on all of the, to me, it looks like it meets the general intent and purpose of the bylaw. It's similar to other uses that are permitted as of right. I'm not understanding that there's any real adverse impact from it. So I'm in support of the application. And there's nothing in law that would prevent this application from being approved. Outright prohibitions that's the whole point of the minor variance that you can seek to end outright prohibition.
Right. Scott?
Been listening very intently to all the discussion, which has been fantastic. I just had a follow-up question therefore to staff. The OP is pretty clear that commercial uses are not permitted, and yet the current zoning does allow them. Does that mean that Crosby will take them all away? Just curious.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this area is still in a secondary plan review, in the neighborhood planning review. And it would be premature for me to determine what the final outcome of that review would be in terms of what the zoning would be applied to. I would think that the zoning would implement the official plan and that it would align with the official plan. And what specific restrictions, I don't know that I would have a comment on that today.
Okay. Did Mike disappear on us? Kind of looks like it. Diane, is Mike sitting off to the side somewhere or something?
No, it does not appear that way. I was just looking.
Okay. All right, Scott?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, because I think I know where this is headed. I don't think anybody has really debated the date in the condition number 1 to come up with a reasonable date. Could Mr. Chauvin indicate what that date should be in order to fully fulfill the conditions that are being recommended, including the new ones?
Personally, to be honest with you, I think that in my opinion, I think if we were to consider any conditions, I don't think we need to consider the conditions that were recommended because they're a matter of, you have to do that anyways. You need an occupancy permit, you need a building permit. They can't proceed without it in any event. So I don't think by putting those in, it kind of muddies the decision. If there's any conditions to be considered, I think it would probably be the ones that were suggested by Bob, which really do not require a date at all, right? And I think that would maybe be more appropriate. There's Mike. Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add to this or questions?
I'm sorry, I got totally kicked off the interweb there and have lost the last 5 minutes of conversation completely. My apologies. I continue on where you are and I'll catch up.
Okay. The other condition that
Can you see me yet?
No, I can't see you. I see your name, and I hear you, but I can't see you. The other condition you may want to consider would be that it would be approved in accordance with the space shown on the site plan submitted, which would be, then that would address that concern then as well, which I think would be appropriate and probably fair for all. There you are, Mike. Fair for all parties involved. So that all being said, Jennifer, did you want to proceed with a motion of some kind, or how do you want to do this? Or Bob?
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll chime in here at the moment. And first off, thank Ms. Meter for her non-official legal opinion. And it cleared up a bunch of stuff for me. So I think there is a consensus amongst the committee that this is not a bad idea. I think it should move ahead. And I'm prepared to, we don't have the list of any conditions other than the two that I had suggested, that the external membership be restricted to 100, and that, what was the other one? And that there be no external signage to attract people from outside or from across the road to the park. But there's also one other thing that was mentioned in the staff report about bicycles. We want, and maybe that's just transportation planning had done that. I haven't gone through the site plan. So a question to Mr. Chauvin, is there lots of bicycle parking available on site?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, there is outdoor bicycle storage as well as indoor bicycle storage.
Okay.
It's shown on the same floor plan that
I see
I
it.
was looking at.
Then that's fine with me. Then, Mr. Chair, I move that this application be approved as amended with the additional, my two additional suggestions of the 100 member restriction and no external signage. So that's my motion, Mr. Chair.
And just for clarification, would that be then not including the recommended conditions and not having a date to it?
Well, yeah, Mr. Chair.
Because with what you have, I don't think requires a date, correct?
No.
And like I said before, the conditions that they recommended have to be done anyways, but with this being a large overall condo development, putting a time restriction and specifically in the environment that we're in right now with the pandemic is very, very onerous. So
I agree 100%, Mr.
So
Chair.
that-
No
remove
timeline.
all that. Okay, remove all that. Okay, so it's just a limited signage and the membership of 100 at a time.
Yeah.
Okay. Scott?
There was also the consideration, Mr. Chairman, of
And-
yours, and I think.
Yes, and the existing site plan.
Yeah, the existing.
Yeah.
Shown on the existing site plan, the site.
Right. Yeah. So that should be in there as well. That was shown on their existing site plan.
So
Okay.
condition number 3 is that the approval shall be subject to the site plan numbers outlined in the report,
Yep.
to the satisfaction of the director of planning.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so that's just 3 conditions, none of them that were stated in the report, and no time limit then on it as well. Okay, so that's the condition, Bob? That's your recommendation? Okay, that's the motion. Can I get a vote second? Jennifer, all in favor? Great, thanks, Scott. Carried.
There you go. Mr. Chauvin, green light.
There we go. Done. Thank you.
Everyone.
I apologize. Through the chair, I just needed to confirm all members were in support of that decision.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
correct.
That's
That
a-
is correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just need to know
Yep.
for decision sheets. Wonderful.
Yeah, everyone was in support. Okay. Next application is A202115. This is 11 Ian Ormston Drive. It's just a question for Julianne. It says as amended, but I didn't see any amendment in the report. Was there supposed to be an amendment to this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe it was amended after it was received, and so it was acknowledged in the report that it had been modified since it was received. So no, there was no additional amendment.
Okay, and the applicants.
I believe the applicant's aware and
in agreement with the amendment then.
Correct. Yep.
Where is the applicant?
Through the chair, the applicant is not on the call. The amendment was actually due to my my error in the notice.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought the property was in existence because it noted the property was currently residential when in fact it was vacant. So that was.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure I just wanted to make sure I said it properly. That's all.
That being said, the applicant is not on the call right now, so the best I can do is send them a quick email asking them to join us, and hopefully we can get them in before the call is over.
Okay, great. So then we'll move on to the next application. It's A2116 241 Simeon Street. And this one we have the sorry, just making a note here. The applicants, are they online?
Yeah, we are here.
Good. Staff's recommending approval without conditions. Anyone have any questions or comments? Scott?
No, I have no issue at all with the application, Mr. Chairman. It was just basically a heads up to the applicant. I'm seeing 2 windows in the side yard of the addition, less than 1.2 meters from the lot line, and typically that's not allowed by the building code. So I'm just giving them a heads up that they may not end up getting the windows unless they're a certain fire safety windows. So just a heads up.
Okay, thanks. Motion?
I'm prepared to move the application. I think it's a very, very minor variance.
Yep. Second, Jennifer, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next application's A2021-17. That's 90 Dutchess Ave. And okay, the applicants.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Bob.
At this point, for this application and the one following it, I'm going to recuse myself. I have a very minor, very, very minor conflict of interest, but it's better to be safe than sorry. I've made the arrangements with our legislative services, so I'm going to step aside, get a refill on my coffee, and I will be allowed back in after these 2 applications.
Okay, thanks.
Bob, you need to declare your conflict. I'm assuming it's pecuniary in nature for both applications?
I have to declare what the conflict is.
Just in general.
I have a family member who was working on this file.
That'll do it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Fairly straightforward application. Staff's recommending approval, all without conditions. Anyone have any questions or comments?
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
My name is Kate Wills. I'm actually a registered professional planner by trade, but I am here as the owner of the property and only representing as the owner, not as a planner. And one other thing in the agenda today, it says that a side yard of 2.61 meters abutting Dunbar Road for the existing garage rather than the required 6 meters. It's for the proposed garage, not the existing garage. I just wanted to clarify that. So I'm here to answer any questions that anyone may have or explain anything further as required.
Great, thanks, Kate. Anyone have any questions, comments, or motion? Yes, Scott?
Mr. Chairman, through you, there was a letter of objection. I don't know if that person is here, but I've read it, and similar to an earlier application, what they're objecting to is something that's in full compliance with the zoning bylaw. It's addition is in full compliance, and quite frankly, I think this particular addition's been well thought out. I think the parking arrangement's going to be better after the addition is built than what exists now. So I'm fully supportive, and I'm willing to listen to other comments from the committee.
Okay. Jennifer, seems like you and me are the only ones left online right now besides Scott. I think we lost Mike again. So
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have no further comments.
Okay, motion,
For those of Mr. Hannes, and I'm prepared to make a motion.
second,
With the minor correction noted by Ms. Willis.
right, second. Scott, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next application is, hang on here. A 2021-18, it's 130 Samuel Street. We should have the applicant online, no opposition. Bob is still sitting this one out. And the one comment that I have before we carry forward is in the recommendation, condition number 1, it's my understanding that we were going to get rid of this building permit obtained condition. So this should probably come right out, I would think, in its entirety. So we remove, just for housekeeping, condition number 1. Okay. Anyone have any questions or comments? Scott?
The question for the applicant through you, Mr. Chairman, if they're okay with conditions 2 and 3, which will now be 1 and 2 about the trees.
Right. That's for the applicant?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that me or Ian?
Yeah, it is you. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand the trees because there's no shared tree, but I do have a maple tree in my backyard that I want to keep.
Sorry, guys, this is Ian. We're the applicant. We will definitely follow. I think the condition's overly onerous. I don't think we're going to really get in the way of that tree, but we are going to undertake all aspects of the tree protection plan to protect it. So I don't think we should have to send a plan for prior approval. That just seems a bit more onerous.
Sometimes the reason that that's in there is because the tree root system that you don't see could be damaged or impeded. So
absolutely, and we will definitely be taking every measure to protect that through careful excavations, Dan, because we are definitely getting closer, but certainly not super close.
Sure. Okay. Anyone else? Hi, Mike. Anyone else or a motion?
Mr. Chair, I understand the applicant's concern with the condition.
Yeah.
But I do see from the plans that there is a minor encroachment into the drip line of the tree.
Yep.
So I support staff's request for this.
Okay.
And so just minor note, the condition 3 would have to now read that condition 1 above be completed by August 1st.
Yeah.
But with those revisions, I'm prepared to move that the application be approved subject to 2 conditions.
All right. Second. Scott, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Yeah, we can get Bob back now, I guess.
Yeah, we will bring Bob back, and I can confirm that Amanda is here for 11 Ian Ormston when that time permits.
Okay, well, we'll do this first A 2021-17, which is a deferral anyways, and then we'll go back to that. So A 2021, they're looking for a deferral to April. Can I just get a motion on that? Scott, second. Bob, all in favor? Carried. That's deferred. Then we'll come back to the application, where are we here? A 2021-15. Okay. Straightforward application. Anyone have any questions or comments? Motion? Scott?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very minor application in my opinion, so I will move the staff recommendation.
Second. Jennifer, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next application's A 2021-20. That's 25 Margaret Ave. Okay. the applicant. To in support. Just a couple comments or questions I have, then I'll turn it over, I guess. Number one, if this is going to zero lot lines, should maybe be a maintenance agreement with the neighbor. That's the one comment that I have, so that probably should be considered. And just a confirmation of the driveway width, that there was a comment from transportation that the driveway width shown, just to confirm that it is 3 meters wide and no more than that. So those are the two comments, and I will turn it over for questioning, because right now it's recommended for approval without conditions. Anyone have any questions or comments? Scott?
Yeah, I had a question for staff through you, Mr. Chairman. I had to drive by this property just to see. It was a very unique arrangement currently. Does staff realize that if this is approved, I guess the curb cut along Margaret Avenue is going to be in the order of 35 to 40 feet wide? And if are there any concerns with that?
Steve?
Sorry, through the chair, I did not have any concerns with that.
Okay, yeah, because it's right now it's a mutual kind of drive, and then they're just going to add to it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
No problem.
All right. Anyone else? Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair. As we've done on many other applications, I am going to suggest we put in a condition that the applicant apply for a building permit. I know we all understand that, but probably not a bad idea to have that there.
I thought we were getting away from that, Bob. We just took it out of the last application.
Did I miss that?
Yeah.
Okay, well then. Then I will retract that.
Because it's very onerous. It's hard for staff to deal with the removal of it. So everyone's aware that you cannot build without a building permit.
I know people who have done things without building permits.
Scott?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I forgot to mention too, I kind of share your issue about the maintenance of the exterior of the carport.
Yeah.
Can the applicant explain how, or the materials maybe, because the plans are a little confusing, and just how they're going to maintain that exterior if it's zero?
Sure. Hi guys, how are you? I'm Scott. Thank you very much for going through this with us today. You want to know the materials that we're going to be using specifically for the carport?
Yeah.
So essentially we're trying to complement the house. So if you're looking at the aerial photo on page 1, we live next to an apartment building, which we thought was going to be a non-issue, but unfortunately we're constantly blocked in with people on the laneway. So the concept is to create a carport out of, we're going to be using like wood as the main material. That's going to be complementary to in color and to the house itself. And the reason for us getting approval now actually is because we're trying to, when we do the laneway, the driveway and the fence, we want to put in the footings now so that we are prepared to build when we're able to build. Does that make sense?
Just as a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, if I look at the plans, the only thing that you're going to have to maintain that's at zero is kind of the decking above the carport.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
So my understanding is, so we have a right of way still on the other side. So when we bought the house, we bought in June. When on closing, when they did the search, we have a right of way which we share with the apartment next door. So
okay.
So technically, I'm assuming that right of way would not disappear. So
no.
We would, because we would want to maintain our fence. We want to make sure the wood is in good condition. We want to make sure that our carport is, maintains a good condition. The fact that we already have a right of way, I would assume that we would take care of that side of the.
Yeah, you would. You would, Scott, what the maintenance agreement does is generally is it's an acknowledgement or agreement with your neighbor that you can go on their property to maintain yours, only because you're a zero lot line. But if you do have a right of way, and our information didn't indicate that, but a right of way would give you the same access or the same ability for maintenance. So, Scott?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Mr. Chairman. I don't think there's a need to add a maintenance agreement. The actual support structure for the carport is 2 feet inside the lot line. They're going to have a fence there. So, you know, I think this is great now that I'm looking at the plan. So,
yep.
Okay.
Okay. Is that a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if you would indulge me, I will certainly support the recommendation of staff.
Okay. Second, Bob, all in favor? Carried. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Next application is A 2021 331 Driftwood Drive. Hang on, I'm gonna go to my other page. Okay, so we have the applicant, Dennis, and staff's recommending approval without any conditions. I didn't see any other comments from any other agencies or anything in this regard. Questions, comments, motion, members? Bob?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is very minor. Staff is not asking for any conditions. I consider this to be an acceptable application. We've done similar before, so I move that this be approved as per the staff report.
Okay, second. Jennifer, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, Dennis. Next application is A 2021-22. And we have 3 people registered, all in support. So I assume that one will talk to the application. Staff's recommending approval without any conditions. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Motion. Scott?
I think this is a great reuse of a building, Mr. Chairman, and the variance is very minor for parking, so I will fully support the recommendation of staff.
All right, second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application is A 2021-23. We have Scott here on behalf of the applicant, and we have one registered opposition, which is Angela. Staff's recommending approval without any conditions. And we did have a letter of concern from a neighbor, and it was dealing with something aside from this application, but it was regarding desired fencing and because of there being trespassed, I guess, from the applicants to this site. So is the person, Angela, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. We'll hear from you first, and then we'll let Scott address his application and your concerns.
Okay, so I actually didn't prepare well for this meeting. I did not expect that I will speak. I live on this street, San Meadow Court, for 14 years now, and extremely disappointed with everything that is being constructed around us. We have a small street with single family homes and are now surrounded by high-rise buildings. And I think that everyone would be, including all of you, would be upset by this if you were living in my place. It's concerning. I understand that maybe this was already planned 15 years ago. I don't know. Nobody told us when we built our house. But maybe even if it's impossible to stop any of this, but I understand that the exception is to actually reduce the space between high-rise building and people's properties. So if this construction will go ahead, then I'm absolutely against of cutting the corners. There are bylaws, so please follow bylaws. Like, it's unbelievable. It's just like I should have taken pictures to show how it looks, because we are kind of on the lower level, and those buildings will be built. There is a hill, so we won't have any sun. Our neighbors keep selling their properties because they can't stand this anymore. We just don't have any neighbors left that moved here 14 years ago, because nobody can stand that. And I'm actually disappointed that I'm the only one who registered for this, because I think that everyone is upset, but nobody is actually willing to speak about this.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Angela. Yeah, thank you. Then there was also something regarding fencing, where, Scott, do you want to just run through your application quickly? They're recommending approval without conditions.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of committee. Thank you for the time. Yeah, the variance is to facilitate the construction of the two last buildings of the project. The variance in itself is for the tower portion of the building facing Highland Road.
Right.
So typically the zoning in place right now, the R9 zoning would require that building to have what I call the wedding cake setback, where the floors would continually go up on an angle. That doesn't necessarily reflect tall building guidelines or current design standards. So this variance is meant to just provide for a setback for the base portion of the building. And then it reflects the tower portion of the building, the main portion of the building, and where it's situated. And then there's, of course, the top level, which is reset again. So this variance does not bring the building any closer to the resident that just spoke. This variance would bring only the tower portion of the building closer to Highland Road, and actually make the building go straight up and down in that location, as opposed to, like I said, doing that step back performance. So that's the relation of that variance. And the other variance is for the 3 dwelling units at grade, and not requiring an amenity space for those 3 units. And I'm not sure what information you get in support of the application, but there's 280 units proposed. So that's right around 1% of the units that don't have the amenity area.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at the floor plans, there's amenity space directly across the hall from where some of these units are proposed. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thanks, Scott. Hand it over to the members of the committee. Any questions or comments? Or Scott?
The lady that spoke in opposition, can she identify where she lives on Sunny Meadow Court?
You want my number of the house?
Yes, please.
Yeah, 212.
Okay, 212. So you're not directly backing on to the project, correct?
Oh no, I would hate it, probably. Thank God I'm not. Thank God. But still, we are actually, I'm sorry, but we are concerned about safety also. You know, it's not, we don't feel that this is a residential area anymore. It turned into a commercial.
Okay, were you the same? We had a letter submitted as well from one of the residents of the area. Are you one and the same, or is that a second person?
Probably no, I'm not aware about the letter. I know that we tried to talk to we talked to municipality a few years ago about the other 4-story buildings that were built right by us. And Savic Homes, they promised that they will plant trees and they will plant this and that to preserve our privacy, because we have zero privacy right now, zero. And this wasn't done neither.
Okay, I just needed to know your location. Question for either staff or Mr. Patterson. The existing buildings that are there now that back onto or abut, I guess, Sunny Meadow Court, is there fencing existing or proposed there?
Through you, Mr. Chair. To be honest, I don't know the answer to that. What I can tell you is that the buildings that are constructed along that property line have been registered as part of a condominium. So they would have been inspected by city staff as part of that process. And if there was any site plan deficiencies that were noted, they would have had to have been rectified before this project could proceed to register the condo.
Just for clarification too, Scott, the person that had raised the concern about the fencing actually lives on West Meadow Drive,
right,
which is at the other end of the property.
And those lands, that person may speak, but those lands are also part of the condominium as well now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So any concerns regarding access or trespass or anything like that, that's actually a concern to raise with the condominium corp. I represent the developer in the last stage of the project, so those lands are registered.
Right.
Again, they would have been reviewed by city staff prior to allowing any releases for registration to occur.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Anything else?
Just
Yeah,
in
Mike.
support of the application to move the process along. I'm quite satisfied that these variances are quite minor, and in saying so, I think we should make a motion to recommend approval and allow the project to move forward.
All right, second. Bob, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Next application is B 2021-009. It's 104 Fifth Ave. Staff's recommending approval with conditions. And there was one letter submitted by a neighbor in opposition, but I don't believe they're not registered to speak. So, for the question for the applicant, first off, do you understand all the conditions? Do you have any questions?
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, I am.
Okay. We've seen quite a few of these in this market or this area lately over the last few years. To the members of the committee, do they have any questions, comments, or motion? Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is a straightforward severance. There's no variances. There's 10 conditions. So I move that this be approved with, as a staff report with the 10 conditions.
Okay, second. Jennifer, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Next application is B 2021-10. That's 54th 3rd Ave. Just for some house cleaning, there was 2 conditions from the region that need to be inserted in this. The one got picked up for the fee, but the other condition didn't get picked up for some reason. So just need to make a slight amendment to the staff's recommendation accordingly. And then otherwise, it's a fairly straightforward, again, within the same neighborhood. Does anyone have any questions or comments or motion? Scott?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I picked up on that same thing from the region. I wondered if staff could just advise whether they think the conditions are reasonable. Maybe they just left them out for some purpose. So the regional conditions about noise.
Through you, Mr. Chair, was the condition for?
It's the region standard condition for noise because of the highway.
Right. So is that something that has to go on title, or was it just that there's an acknowledgement of? I don't have the condition in front of me, so could you just refresh my memory?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, it's supposed to be included in all agreements of purchase and sale, lease or rental agreements, or condo declarations. It's their standard clause. So
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be on title, but it's something that the owner has to ensure.
I'm not sure why it was missed.
Yeah, there's another one like that.
Should be
coming up
included.
too. Yeah,
Should be
okay.
included.
There's another one like that coming up too. It just got missed. Yeah. Scott?
Yeah, they will be registered on title, Mr. Chairman, because that's a region requirement. But if they think they're appropriate, then we should be adding them. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Not motion?
Yeah, I'm prepared to move the recommendation. I think the severances make sense. A lot of similar development has taken place in the area, and it's subject to the 11 conditions requested by staff and the 2 additional conditions recommended by the region for noise.
Okay, good. That would actually be 10 conditions by staff. The 11th was a regional one.
Yep.
So that would be 2 additionals. Okay, so that's the motion. Second? Mike, all in favor? Carrie, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, next application is B 2021-11. This is the deferral till April 20th. So can I get a motion on that, please?
I'll make
Bob,
the motion.
second, Mike, all in favor? Carried. So that's deferred.
Through the chair, just for those people that are on the call, as there were people in attendance in support and opposition, all those that are here will be notified of the next meeting via email.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Next application is B 2021-12, B 2021-13. And that was for Whitechapel Street. We have just the applicant. There's 2 applications here, the applicant for both of them. Once again, there's the 2 regional conditions. We only picked up the one, or staff picked up the one only, but we need the 2 conditions for both recommendations. The second being the noise condition again. All right, Scott.
Just a question for staff, though. Wouldn't these noise conditions have been picked up with the original consent applications? I'm wondering if they're even required.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't confirm that without having the original consent applications here. If they are for whatever reason redundant, I'm sure the region would be able to clear that condition fairly easily. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, anyone else? Questions, comments, motion? Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I can support this application. It's got interesting architecture. It's got good land use. I am confident that the parkland issue was dealt with back in 2018 on the original consent applications. So I move that this be approved with the extra conditions for both applications.
All right, second, Jennifer, all in favor? Carried, thank you. All right, last application is B 2021-14, A 2021-24, and A 2021-25. We have support and we have someone in opposition. Operations had a condition, just go through this in a little housekeeping here first. There was regional conditions that didn't get picked up. And then operations had a condition for trees in the boulevard that we need to look at that I didn't see in the report. We can circle back to those 2 items. And in the meantime, what we'll do is we'll hear from Britta. Are you online, Britta? Yes, you are. You're in opposition. So I'll hand it over.
No, I'm in support. I'm in support.
Oh, okay. My sheet said opposition, sorry.
No, in support with conditions.
Okay, all right. All right, then. Hand it over to the members of the committee. Any questions, comments? Yes, Jennifer?
You to the woman who just indicated her support with conditions.
Yeah.
I'd like to seek some clarification that the conditions she's referring to are those recommended by staff, or did she have some other ones that she wanted to?
Some other ones. If you look at the aerial photograph.
Yeah.
I'm at 168 Windale Crescent, which is adjacent to the building. And if you look at the aerial photograph, everything is in line for the frontage. However, if you look at the diagram that is submitted, it's a 4.8. I think it's 4.6, sorry. That is a little bit out, which will be a little bit over onto the street. So I'm just wondering what's happening there. There's a diagram on before.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
where I'm going? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Scott?
Just a question for the neighbor who's living next door. What is the setback of your dwelling? I think it probably is 6 meters, correct?
Yes, it is 6.10.
So what I'm seeing, and maybe the applicant can clarify, is there's probably going to be front porches that are set back 4.6 and the garage is 6.
That is correct.
Pretty consistent with what the rest of the street is.
Okay. So you're saying everything will be in the same line as what I'm seeing from the aerial pictures? Because if you look from the frontage, the measurement that's there, the garage area, it's 6.05. That's the driveway. And then you have a 4.6, which is because it's a semi, and the driveway is right in the center of that of the diagram. So if it's a front porch, then wouldn't it be a little bit out more than the others? Just look clearly at it.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Jennifer.
I definitely understand the concerns that this person is raising, because
Yep.
we only have a site plan, we don't have any elevation, so it's difficult to understand what exactly is going
Yep.
on. Can we get a bit more of a description, and whether or not this porch, this extension of whatever, I guess it's 1.4 meter extension, is that fair?
Yeah, 1.45, yes.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant, can you please explain exactly what's being proposed in that area, and that can you confirm it's a 1-story structure in that, and then perhaps whether or not you'd be willing to have the variance, that front yard variance restricted to single story?
If you can just give me 10 seconds to open up the full set of drawings to confirm exactly what's proposed here, but that definitely is a porch area. So let me just check the plan and the elevation. That is, we are proposing to have a second floor above covering that porch. So the second floor would be in line with that front and would be 4.6 meters from the front property line.
So it would be outside of what the neighborhood would look like then. It would not be in that straight line. Because if you look at the aerial photograph, everything is a setback of 6 point whatever meter it is. So that would come out more.
This would be just the section directly above the porch. It would not be across the whole width of the structures.
But there is still a difference of 1.45 in the frontage.
That's what we're hearing. Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, could staff clarify? I don't think that requires a variance. The variance is actually for lot area. I just need clarification on that.
For you, Mr. Chair, there were no additional variances required. They would have been flagged by staff. And it is only for a portion of the building, as the applicant has said.
Okay.
For you, Mr. Chair, if there's no variance associated with it, then the bylaw in its wisdom must see that setback as being in keeping with ensuring the character of the area is met. So if there's no variance associated with it, we can't really do anything about it. So I think
Right.
with Hannah for, I'm prepared to move that the application be approved. We get conditions set out in the staff report
With the regional conditions.
with the regional conditions.
Yep, yep. And I just want to make note before I call for second that there's a condition or there's something from operations for the tree boulevard that the applicant needs to be aware of. So it's in the report. And they actually had asked for a condition. I don't know if we want to consider that or not, Jennifer, but on under operations comments, they did ask for a condition for the tree in the boulevard.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, what was the exact condition? I think I missed
It
it.
shall be the responsibility of the person in charge of, this is on operations comments, that page.
Take adequate steps to protect any tree on city property.
Yeah.
I think that's a new one. I don't think we've seen that one.
I've never seen that before either, no. No,
I'm not sure if that's,
condition or a comment?
I mean, if they accidentally destroy this tree, there's fines associated with that. I think they have an obligation not to remove that tree or impair it unless there is a permit for that. But I'm prepared, subject to your thoughts, I'm prepared to.
Well, as long as everyone's aware of it, and we probably don't need to condition it, I think you're probably right, Jennifer, because I don't quite know how you do that. I don't know how you'd clear it, right, Julianne?
Correct. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I think that's why we left it the way it was, because it was
Gotcha.
just part of the report, so the applicant was aware
Yeah.
that they're going to have to protect that tree.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay, so there's just the regional conditions then added, amended. There's a motion on the floor. Can I have a second? Scott, on favor? Carried. Thank you. That concludes today's Committee of Adjustment meeting. Scott, a motion to adjourn. Scott, second. Mike, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for the marathon.